it's a matter of the age and experience combined. And so it's important as we look at the roles to which we have. We looked at the age. We began to look at the conduct of that aged man, the duty of older men. You'll find that in chapter 2, verse 2 in our text. If you go there, chapter 2, verse 2, it says that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith. The word sound there means healthy, right? Not the sound as in audible, obviously, but sound giving way to the word healthy, to which we might use a little bit more today. We do use that word sound. I got a sound report from the doctor, right? A healthy report from the doctor. And so, but that's kind of where that would take you. Healthy in the faith, faith being doctrine, healthy in doctrine, impatient, impatience. And so we're going to look at that list a little bit more. We started down through it. And it's just important. It's important. And one of the things I strive to do in this series in Titus is not just to say, here's what you ought to be, but then answer the question as to why you ought to be this. Right? I feel like sometimes once we understand the why, it helps. And so we looked at that. We said sober. When we look at the word sober, it means sound-minded. It's much like the word we use when it comes to somebody who's under the influence, or they are sober. They're in control. They're some could say even-keeled, right? Self-control, sober-minded, sound thinking. Sound thinking. One that gives sound advice. Sober. We looked at that at some length last time we met. The only reason I'm bringing these up again is because it feels like it's been a little bit since we've been in Titus.
Yes.
With some of the stuff that we, with the weather and holidays and such like that. But sober. Grave. Now, grave, we're not talking about graves in the graveyard, but grave denotes a sense of seriousness, right? The graveyard isn't a place of party, is it? Right? It's a somber place. It's a place that's serious, right? I'll never forget when my grandmother had passed, and I had a young kid. Ethan was really young at the time, and when my grandmother passed, we had a funeral in Michigan. We had a funeral in Tennessee. It was like the funeral in Michigan lasted multiple days, and the funeral in Tennessee, it's one of those that just went on forever. And I remember my kid, Ethan, he was kind of over it. And he might have been acting like a young kid during the funeral of one of them. The funeral director had to get on him a little bit about where he was at. And why? Because those situations are grave. They're serious. And so that is something that the older man should be. Now, does that mean he has to be some stoic figure, unemotional and unapproachable? No. No, but when matters need to be serious, he's serious. He's serious. This doesn't mean that they can't smile, but they realize the seriousness of the role that they play and the position that they hold. And I often say it this way, we're trying to teach our kids too. Understand the room. You ever told a child that? You got to understand the room. I think the older men ought to understand the room, when it's time to be serious, when it's time to be lighthearted. And this is something that ought to be a characteristic of men. Why? Why would this be important? Why would this be something that Paul tells Titus that here's how men ought to act in the church?
They're examples.
Well, yes, they're examples. The young people are going to pick up on them. Right? How do you train young people? You tell them, but most importantly, I believe at that age, you show them. You show them. This is important. Right? It's important for them to understand that the matters of the church, that there are things that are serious. There are things that are sacred. There are things that we don't treat like other things. Right? And that is something that men ought to characterize in their walk with the Lord, but also in their role here at the church. And it's to teach that there are some serious things about what takes place in the house of the Lord. Okay? Grave. All right? What about temperate? Now, we talked about this when it went to the pastor. Now, I'm going to quiz you because we went at pretty good lengths, and I really like this word here because when it came to the characteristics of the pastor, we had a good conversation about it, so I'm going to quiz you. What what does the word temperate mean? What does the word temperate mean? And also answer why would it be important for the older men of the church to hold this characteristic? What does the word temperate mean?
Controlled, backing.
Steady in emotion.
Okay, steady in emotion, controlled. What did you say? What else? You said another word.
In thinking.
In thinking.
Making
Okay.
comments.
All right. Even keeled. Once again, D.
Well, my reference Bible goes to the Greek and it says discreet.
Mm.
I don't know how that fits. I don't really know that feel of that word discreet. How does it fit with temperance?
Well, temperance, I always imagined, is one that's in control and not inflammatory. One that isn't emotional highs and emotional lows, that they are within control with discipline. That's what I would say is the attitude of this word in this moment. It's one that is disciplined and not high low, right? We liken this, we use this word as well today in our vernacular in the similar and right way as we look at temperate climates. They don't have extreme swings one direction to the other direction, right? They're in this range, right? Now, does that mean we can't ever be emotional about something? Once again, no. But there's a time, there's a place, there's an understanding that men ought to not be inflammatory, to not ride the highs and the lows. They ought to be one of steadiness, consistency, right? Something about a temperate climate, it's consistent. It's consistent.
Yeah, we are the thermostat. Men are the thermostat. You know, if we stay steady, a lot of times it comes with de-escalation
Okay, that's good.
of things, or a raising of somebody that's down lower, you know, to bring them up.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
It's we're the thermostat.
Yeah.
Temperate.
Yeah. I think that, it kind of, go ahead, John.
Behind you.
Oh, temperate zone. Well, we wouldn't be much of the temperate zone here in Indiana anyway. We got a pretty big swing. There goes that illustration. No, but when you look at it, it's not one extreme or the other, right? We don't live in the Sahara where it's 120 degrees in the summer, and we don't live in the frozen tundra of the Arctic Circle, and it never rises above -45. Okay, that's not where we live. And so one that is temperate, and this is important. And I think Mike was headed the right direction. Was in the idea that the older men of the church. Let me ask you this: if they're in a panic, what's it going to do? It's going to put everybody else in a panic, right? And so when they're holding steady, they're the to Mike's good analogy, the thermostat. That's going to help everybody else hold steady. That's why I believe it's important. One, we're not uber emotional within the church on decisions, right? You ever been in a business meeting where it gets extremely emotional?
Yep.
Right? Let me ask you that. Is that healthy? I'm not, look, passion is one thing. But passion has a fine line with motion. Okay? And it can cause problems when we bring a lot more, too much emotion instead of rational thinking or objective thinking. Or, passion is okay. But coming up, coming down, those swings, it's important for us as older men. And I believe I just lump myself in older men. I'm not there yet. Am I done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not just, yes, in church, obviously.
Right.
But in your home, too. I see where there's not a steadiness, I get to deal with that in my classroom,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
I
do.
see the result
Keep things level.
of the ups and downs,
Mhm. What about this next one here? Sound in faith. I think I already kind of hit on it. Sound meaning healthy doctrine. The aged men ought to have their doctrine under control. Something that they are established in, not being tossed to and fro with every what? Wind of doctrine. they ought to have a good control, a good grasp, grounded. Why do you think that is, Bob? Why do you think it's important for the aged men?
For multiple reasons. I think that it's, first of all, they can control the conduct of the church
Okay.
when they're using sound doctrine. And it will help the people that are not as sound doctrine to not be tossed to and fro.
Okay. That's good. I couldn't agree more on that. I also think this, I know this, my son is 17 years old. And I know he's talked to some of you about different things, right? And if Paul is teaching Titus here that, hey, it's important that in your churches, we're talking about the conduct of churches, that in your churches, the aged men act in this manner, right? And then he's going to get here, we're going to get to the young men, okay? But I believe it is a help to steer the next generation as well. It's a help to steer the next generation. Being rooted and grounded in your doctrine, so that way when you end up maybe teaching a class, when you might handle a devotional for a class, you can do so with such confidence, right? It's important. Go ahead, Dean.
How does that, taking the shield of faith and the armor fit with that?
Taking the
So that you're able to quench the fiery darts of the wicked.
I think it's a protection too of the congregation as well, right? That when there's a heresy that might pop up, the men of the church say, "Oh, hey, that's not sound doctrine. It's not sound doctrine, right?" Instead of leaving the pastor to fight it alone, right? The congregation ought to be able to, the aged men of the church ought to be able to stand up and say, "Hey, that doesn't sound right. That's not right." So not only is it a shield of faith to protect the individual in the sense of the armor individually, but the church as well, right? Satan would love to come in and start spreading some seeds of false doctrine within our church. As a matter of fact, probably each person, if they've been in church long enough in this congregation, have seen it happen or heard it happen at a church before, maybe even were there. And so I believe if you're going to talk about the armor, I believe the men, when having a healthy doctrine, sound in the faith, it helps protect the church as well. And not just the pastor. Right? Pastor's supposed to have it. It's mentioned that in his list. But he's not the only one that's supposed to have it. It's the church, the men of the church. Is that kind of where you were thinking, Dean?
Yeah, the shield of faith, I've noticed in all the battles, recently I've not been holding up the shield of faith, and it hits at the heart of righteousness. It goes from the, if you don't have your breastplate of righteousness on, you really have heart problems. So the Satan seems to get through that. Because he attacks the justification, and you get down on yourself, or in sin, you question yourself. But take that shield, it stops Satan's attacks.
Yeah, you take the shield and remind yourself what, the true doctrine of it, and it helps thwart the attacks of the wiles of the devil. And within our church, too. At a church level. Like what?
In a different light, when it talks about being sound in faith with the aged men, I think all of us that are a little bit older can think back of and see the guiding hand of the Lord in our lives, and we can set up those memorials in our lives
was once your age and had a similar battle, right?
Yeah.
So it's good. Sound in faith, right? I think we're under an understanding and agreement. Joe?
Yes, it's kind of that one more, you know, you also, you hear a lot of times people's testimonies, how they had that one teacher, or, you know, or maybe family or something that was sound in the faith and led them to Christ. And that was kind of like a turning point in their
Sure.
life, you know, so, you know, people sound in faith, I would do to maybe be that person for somebody,
Right.
like what I'm saying. That you could be the turning point in some younger person's life.
Yeah.
And not
You're-
only salvation, but in following God.
That's good. That's good. Good points. All right, now let's go to this next one. Aged men, looking out across here. Some of us are getting up there, and so this all applies to charity. What's your thoughts on charity? Charity, what does it denote? Love, all right? But it goes beyond that, right? It's not just love, right? Because we say we love a lot of things. But it's love that is, you know, some people say in action, love in action, love. I like the word love expressed. Like how do you express your love? That is charity that we're looking at here. Yeah, he's to be a loving person. He's to be a loving person who's able to express love to others. That phileo love, that express love to others. Why would this be important as men, aged men in the church? Why would a man be instructed within the church to have charity, which we know would be defined as love expressed or love in action, right? Charity. Any thoughts to that? Why would this be? Now, keep in mind, Paul is, of all the things that he could have listed that ought to be a characteristic of a man in the church, these are the ones that he lists. So you have to think to yourself, there is a very good reason why they're listed. Okay? John.
Earlier in the list, he has sober, grave, and temperate, which alone can lead people to think stoic.
There you go. Yep.
And without that charity, you can say man should be stoic and not show much emotion. However, Christ showed much emotion in his life. We're supposed to emulate Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And in charity and love, young men need to see aged men doing this so that they know how, for one, and two, that it's okay to do so.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly where I was. That's almost word for word how my notes would say in explanation to this, right? Because the first series there, it kind of has more of that mature, serious, temperate, grave. It's as if Paul's saying, look, but there is another side to this. There's this thing called love, the way he loves his wife, the way he loves the brother next to him, the way he loves his pastor, right? Not by word only, but by deed. And this is important not only for the youth to see, but for the church to see, for others, man next to him to see, right? This, if I'm honest, this is something that I believe, I don't know if it's Western culture throughout the last, and I think there's a shift, but I can definitely tell you there's a time that men were stoic, right? They didn't show, they didn't talk, they didn't say love much, and they didn't show it as easily. They didn't let that guard down. They had an image to protect. And I believe that's what Paul is saying here. Look, you are to be these things that are a little more serious, but this one is the counter to that. So you're not tipping the scale, that you express it. And it's super important within the church. Look, not only can the person next to you pick up on it, but our kids can pick up on it. They can pick up on somebody who can care less about the brother next to them, or even them themselves, no matter what they say. Right? We can all testify, I love my brother, I love my sister. But many times we can see right through those things. Right? So that's why this word is important, charity, expressed. So, and what are you doing to express your love for your brother?
You know, I was going to say, just a very specific example of that is Isaac holding the door open because he's seen other men holding the
But it's also for the brother too.
Yeah. And another specific example that not many people noticed, but even on Sunday, without being told or anything else,
Heavy.
Joe was out there scraping black ice up,
Oh,
you know, and by the time he would finish, it'd refreeze and he'd scrape it again, you know? And he didn't do it because, because he was getting paid or that he wanted accolades. He did it out of love for others, you know? So,
Dean?
I was thinking that in my reference Bible, it says, sound is healthy. So to be healthy in faith, healthy in charity, and healthy in patience, would follow through with that in grammatically. Let's see, I don't know how that checks out with Doug's Greek or not.
So when we look at this, when we think of charity, I think it's important that we express it. There is something within it that like I said, so often when we look at these verses, we attach them in their importance because of the youth. But I'm going to tell you, it encourages me when someone expresses their love to me here at the church. I'm like, man, he cares about me, and that's important because when times get difficult, right? And look, for the church, we would love to see a great awakening, and there very well could be a great awakening. We pray for that great awakening, but we do know that the church will be persecuted pretty heavily there in those last days. And so there's going to be a time when we need to have that encouragement, rely upon each other, and it's good to know that you have that, and that's why it's important in a church. I believe it causes a healthy church. So charity. The next one, and to Dee's point, you can grammatically, I'd have to look at it to see if it carries on, but healthy and patience, or patience here. Now, what kind of patience are we talking about? Are we talking about, just waiting your turn patience? Is that what this means? Does anybody have any thoughts here?
Self-control, you're level in your life, not up and down. You wait, you know what the Bible teaches, but you have to act like that.
Yeah.
Be patient with the Lord's work, His words, and how God works with us. We have to be strong. We don't know what tomorrow holds.
So, I think the way you could define this, in when you go back to the Greek and you look at it, patience is that peace under pressure. Okay? It's not just, I'm in the doctor's office waiting for the doctor to call my name. It's in the doctor's office when the doctor has called you in because he has the results in his hand, and you're in the waiting room, and there's a calmness about you regardless of the circumstance, right? I'm not saying that you can't be nervous about that or anxious. Don't get me wrong. But what we're looking at is peace under pressure. And I believe this is vital within the church that our men have this characteristic about them. Why? Because when the world is quote unquote falling apart, things just, the news wants to tell you that everything is just terrible. What are we going to do? The men of the church can have a peace under pressure. And that peace under pressure is contagious, just like the opposite is contagious as well. One that is panicked at any slight wind out there. The sky is falling. What's that?
Chicken Little.
Chicken Little, right? That's the analogy. One that's Chicken Little, that's not going to help the brothers and sisters in Christ, and it's not a good example as well. So, peace under pressure, long suffering. It gives way to long suffering as well. A complete, here's what it boils down to, a complete and total confidence in God, no matter what the circumstances, and no matter, no matter what's happening on around us, that we don't fall apart when adversity comes. Okay? And that's important.
I was just thinking, as a church that was Altadena, whether that church got burned completely down, but what would that do to the members if we had our church, for example, and my house was gone? That would take a lot of patience. I think, at that point.
It would take a lot of maturity, a lot of men expressing that Christian maturity. It would take a lot of charity, expression of love in moments
we still have emotions and many things to deal with.
I couldn't tell you how many times the Lord has brought to my mind, whether in preparation for a message or preparation for teaching. And it wasn't originally me, I heard it somewhere, maybe on sermon audio, listening to a sermon. But somebody, I heard it, said God either authored it or allowed it. The two A's. Right? Authored it or allowed it. And God doesn't author evil. But he does allow certain things to take place in our lives. Now, there are some things that God does author, right, in our lives. So he either authors it or allows it. And that has come to my mind a lot. And, over the course of the last year or two, whether it be with what's happening to us around the world, natural disasters, things that are happening within my own family, things that's happening at work, things like, so I have to say, like to your point, Dwayne, is that God is sovereign and in control. And he's either authored it or allowed it, and we must, at that moment, as men, or aged men, have a patience about us.
Well, if you don't have that patience as a Christian, then you're just not doing what the Lord wants you, you're fighting against it. When he answers prayer, sometimes it's no, and it's harmful, it's wrong, but usually it's yes or wait a while.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to wait a while, you might as well hang up your prayer sheet, because you just don't jump on us like we want.
Yep.
Patience.
Totally agree, and we were working with this with my own children. I was talking to Emma one night, and we were sitting there, we were talking, and we were talking about answered prayer. And she said, does God answer all of our prayers? And I said, yes. I said, it's yes, no, or not right now. And so we talked about that, and to wrap this up, we're talking about patience. It's that complete trust in God at the end of the day. Now, it's a lot easier sometimes to stand up here and teach it when things are going great, when my house isn't burned to the ground, right? And when natural disaster hasn't taken everything that I own asset-wise. When health seems to be doing okay right now. It's easy to say these things, but practice and preparation helps for the moment at hand, right? And so the way we pray today affects what we do tomorrow. The way we prepare today affects what we do tomorrow. And so, men, this is important. I'm going to run through this list, men. I want you to think about it and ask yourself. Not ask yourself, you're going to deceive. Ask the Lord. Ask the Holy Spirit to reveal, is there an area of my life that is not lining up with this list? I'm going to read it again. Sober. Not in terms of alcohol or addiction, but rather one of sound mind, one in control. Okay? Not one being controlled outside the leading direction of the Holy Spirit, but one that is sober, one that is grave, that has a sense of seriousness about them, has an attitude that there are times to be serious and times to be lighthearted. So there's that understanding of when, reading the room, temperate, one that's not super it's in there, temperate. One that's, we're not high, low. We're not flying off the handle. We're not throwing temper tantrums. Sound in faith. Am I healthy in my faith? Do I know what I believe and why I believe it? This is super important for the aged men to have this, to have this in their faith. It's not just what I believe, but why I believe it. Because there's going to come a point when you got to explain why you believe it. Not just what I believe, do you?
The verb there is be. Being who you are is wrapped up in that word be. We should be that and then work from that point on.
Then charity, expressing love, and at the end, patience, peace under pressure, confidence in God. Confidence in God. I think these are things that ought to be named amongst the men of our church. And ladies say amen, right? Pastor says amen. And then men, you can say amen to the ladies next week. So these things are good. I think these things that when lived out in the condemnation, a church will remain healthy. A church will remain focused on what God desires us to focus on. Yes, yes. So think about those things, man. Are these areas of my life that need to be addressed? Are these areas of my life that allow the Holy Spirit to reveal anything that's not right, and that we would tonight say, Lord, forgive me, and allow the Holy Spirit to help me in these areas. I know some people say, but I've just got a temper. It's just part of who I am. Is that, it's not gonna, I'm trying to think of how to say this politely, Doug. You're not that person, you're a new creature, right? And that doesn't give you an excuse, right? You can have a tendency, you say, I lean this way. Well, ask God for help. Ask God for wisdom. And He's promised to give us that wisdom. And so, God's not going to require you to do something that you cannot do, right? He can give victory in these areas. You have victory there, believe it. John, were you going to say something? Okay. Can I have my glasses?
It was subtract.
Huh?
It wouldn't add.
Okay, all right. I didn't have my glasses on. I can't tell if you couldn't tell if you're hanging on. All right. Well, God bless you. Thank you for coming out tonight. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the men of our church. I really do appreciate the men of our church. I've seen growth in the men of our church, and I appreciate that. It's a sign of a healthy church when men follow what God has directed them and how they should carry themselves within the church and ultimately within their lives. All right, let's go ahead and break up into some groups, if you would, tonight, and go over our prayer list and pray for those names that were mentioned, those things that were mentioned